All right, welcome you guys. Thanks for coming on Tuesday, kind of at the last minute. We really kind of didn't bring this up till last week. End of last week, Jackie and I were talking with Shari, and we're just kind of unsure. I know we have tentatively set that last weekend in May for a leader retreat, but who knows what's going to happen. And so we decided now to start working with you guys because it's crazy, we're quarantined, but sales are great, sponsoring's great. So why not take advantage of everything while we're in this great momentum with without losing it and stuff. So Jackie and I had Shari come in tonight, and she's going to talk to you guys about follow-up, fortunes in the follow-up. And then we were thinking next week we have to set a day with Shari. We're going to go in, she's going to go in with the whole team and do a follow-up coaching, but different, because today's for leaders and next week will be the team. So anyway, anything you want to add, Jackie, before?
No, you covered it all. Thank you so much. I'm just excited to see everybody, and let's do this. It's the best time ever.
I know. All right. Thanks, Shari. Go ahead. It's fun to see your face instead of having you just on a phone. We talked her into this, by the way. We're like, come on, we want to do Zoom if we're doing this. We want to see your face.
So, Debbie, do you want to put the slides up for me?
Oh, I'm putting them up? Oh, yeah, I guess that would make sense. Give me a sec. You can just chat with them for a second.
Yeah, let me just talk with you guys a little bit while Debbie's bringing up the slides for you. I don't know if you have hopped over to the Outreach to Excellence page in time in the last couple of weeks to see any of the lives that I've been doing about what's really going on in our industry. I mean, certainly you guys are seeing it at Color Street with sales being better than they've ever been. I think you guys are doing like $1 million a day or something right now. And recruiting is up. Everything at Color Street is going really well in spite of this really weird space that we're in. I'm especially fortunate to have a product.
Let me mute everybody. Hang on, Shari.
Oh, sure.
It's
Okay.
kind of loud. Okay, and then I'm unmuting you. There you go. Okay, I'm going back to look for this email. All right, are you there, Shari?
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going then.
Yeah, so we kind of saw the panic that happened with, of course, we were stuck at home all of a sudden with the kids and people are trying to work from home. There was about a week of just sheer panic, and then came the calm, and people started spending a lot more time on Facebook. We started seeing people doing family Zooms just to connect with each other. Long story short, we're in a space right now where the country is really wanting connection. That's why one of the reasons that we're seeing parties being booked so much more easily than I've seen it in well over a decade. I mean, the party counts are coming at us. They're coming high, they're coming easy, like I haven't seen in a long, long time. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you know what's going on out there and that this is a really good time to leap into your business. I hope you will be re-messaging that kind of message to your teams. That's one of the things I ask my coaching clients whenever we're talking, of the last couple of weeks is, are you talking to your team about how easy it is to get bookings right now? Are you encouraging them to reach out to people? Are you talking about recruiting? I was coaching with Shauna Mulcahy today, and she was sharing her recruiting numbers with me. Just really impressive. It's interesting times right now, but not in a bad way for us. And I know it's a big question mark as far as what's the world going to be like at the end of this when we can really get back out and about again. Is the party going to be coming this easily? But I think yes. I mean, my gut just says that we have all realized that our priorities were perhaps a little bit mixed up and come back to some different priorities that I think are going to stick with us once we leave this. And connecting with people is one of the things that people are talking about everywhere. We just kind of got away from that. We got too busy for that. But that's not really what we're talking about tonight. I just wanted to chat with you a little bit about that while we're waiting for the slides to come up. Tonight, we're going to talk about follow-up. And when Jackie and I and Debbie were talking, I think it was last Friday, maybe, about how can I help? What can I do for your organization? this came up, and I was really excited about this because it's not a topic that I get to train on very often, but I think it's a miss that we don't talk about this. It's a miss in the leadership role, certainly not just at Color Street, but just universally in the direct selling industry, because we haven't been trained on it very well. How important is follow-up? And I'm not talking about following up with your customers or following up with recruits. That's what we're going to be talking about next week with you and your stylist. But how important is it for you to be following up with your team, not checking on them to see what they're doing, but in a very different way, following up on the messages that you want them to hear loud and clear. One of the things I say all the time is that, in fact, you probably saw it in the email that Debbie sent out to you guys, is when they get on a training like the one that I'll do for them next week, or a training that you might be doing for your team, or a training that they might have heard at national conference, they only retained 15%. And it's because they're distracted most of the time. You know, I mean, even some of us tonight are multitasking, and it's the same with our people when they're listening to a training. They might be in a car listening, they might be folding laundry, they might be making dinner. So they're not 100% engaged often when they're listening to that training. So the follow-up is super important. They only, at a good point, they retain 15%. If they take notes while they're listening and are more engaged, then they remember 25%. But it's a very small percent of what they retain. So another thing that I say often is we have to hear something 7 times before it starts to settle in. Jackie, you know, you and I've coached together for a couple of years now, I think, and I mean, how many times would we talk about something and it would make more sense to you the more we talked about it, right? So it would settle in a little bit more. And Jackie is no exception, meaning that happens with pretty much every coaching client I've got. The more we talk about it, the more the pieces they absorb, the more it starts to make sense to them. So go ahead and go to the next slide if you would, Deb. So that's what we're talking about tonight, is why are we following up, and what are we following up on? What are some of the things that are important for us to be remessaging and things like that. So you want to remember 7 times. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And we're talking about remessaging, over-communicating, and we'll talk about creating mantras within your organization. But when you're on a training like the one that we're going to do with your team next week, or maybe you've got leaders in your downline that are on this training that we're doing tonight, and you're taking notes and you're thinking, okay, this is something I want to make sure they really get. When you're doing a coaching call with your leader, you can bring that up again. Or on the training next week that we do for your stylists and your leaders, and you're listening and you're taking notes, what are the key points that jump out at you that you want to make sure they really got? Well, we do that by remessaging it. And we're going to talk about different platforms that we can do that in. And over communicating. For example, you guys have probably heard, if you've been on any trainings that I've done with Jackie and Debbie, you've probably heard me use the term 10-8-2, book 10 to hold 8 to recruit 2 for explosive growth. It's a mantra. So you've heard that a lot of times. But how many of us remember that? Or does it just kind of go by the wayside? We forget about that. And then our party count starts to drop, and maybe recruiting isn't what we want it to be. And we forgot how important that the right party count is. Over communicating things to people, saying them again and again and again and again, is how things really start to stick with people. I read somewhere by a big well-known speaker, I can't remember which one it was, but he said he was a leadership speaker, and he said we under-communicate by a ratio of 1 to 100, meaning we need to say it 99 more times before before it's done. And I can remember when I was at Party Light, that was one of the things that our president did really well, is teach us how to over-communicate through lots of different platforms. And so messages like that, like 10-8-2, or for a couple of years, we had a program called 21 Up. I want you to just try and wrap your head around that, but we did. And so that was like the big incentive, the big promotion, the big message was you always want to have 21 up. And it became a mantra that we followed for 2 years. It was everywhere. We were doing recognition for it. We were training on it. We were teaching on it, and trying to motivate and inspire people to have 21 parties on their calendar. Kind of like 10 8 2 better, don't you? But that was a big deal there. And it was everywhere. That's what we're talking about when we say over communicating. You might feel like, gosh, I've said this so many times, they're going to throw something at me pretty soon. They haven't even heard you yet. So we talk about it in our newsletters and on coaching calls and here and there and there, and it starts to settle in, and then we stop talking about it and they forget about it again. We might work with one of our stylists or a leader on recruiting and how to recruit from your nail bars, and we worked with them and they really gotten it. They've got the whole system down, but then all of a sudden they forget about it, and we have to come back and talk about it again. Over communicating. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's talk about some of the things that we want to remessage, meaning that we're talking about it again and again. We're also working with our leaders to make sure that they're doing the very same things. There are seasonal messages that we want to bring up at certain times of the year. For example, in April is when I would start every year talking about the slow summer months are coming. April's a great month. May's going to be slower. June's going to be slower than May, and July is going to be a train wreck. We would talk about it starting in April to make sure that they understood the importance of getting that momentum going in April so that it would keep their calendar going through May, June, and July to protect that summer income, to protect that summer party count. And then with my leaders, I'd be talking to them about this is what's coming, reminding them this is what's coming, this is what's coming. In November and December, we would talk about the importance of overbooking January, because January holds a 50 to 75% cancellation rate. So we'd start talking about it in November and keep talking about it through the end of the year, just so we had a better chance at helping our stylists to have a better January, because we've prepared them for it. In January with my leaders, every year we had the ethics talk, where I would just talk about what's ethical and what's not. So that didn't really have to do with what was happening in the season. It was just a time of year that I always did that. That was one of the annual conversations that we had. When they launched the incentive trip, then we would focus on training around how to earn the incentive trip and what was the benefits of earning the incentive trip and how to earn the incentive trip. So every year we would be training on that, not just announcing that there was a trip to blah, blah, but really working intentionally to get people excited to be on that incentive trip, to feel like they could be on that incentive trip. So a national conference, when you go to national conference, you are recognized based on rank. And I think that we're still doing this at Color Street. If you've changed rank from the year before, you get to walk across stage. And that's a big deal. As we get bigger and bigger, sometimes companies drop recognizing team leaders and directors because there's too many new ones and it takes too long, but some companies still do it every year. So we would start talking in March about being recognized at conference at your next rank. And, now's the time to make sure you're really focused on changing rank, getting to that next level so you can be recognized not as a director, but as a senior director. So think about the different seasons and what happens in the different seasons. There's market trends. We tend to be slower in the summer months, the slow summer months. There's things that we can do to minimize that fallout, but that's just the market trend. So we want to make sure that we are getting the right messages out there to prepare people for that. We know that January is a tough month. We know that October, November, and December are fabulous gift-giving months. So the market trend is that we have the highest sales of the year in those months. So we message, take advantage of the fall and holiday season. It only comes once a year. You want to take advantage of that. Now at Color Street, that may be summer months for you guys because we've got nails and toes out in public view. So it might be a little different for you guys. But we have a best season of the year at every company. So we want to make sure that we're talking about maximizing the best season of the year. Protect your calendar in those tough seasons. And then recent. Ooh, what did I mean by recent? Let me think. Recent. Like what's going on right now. That's what I meant. Just like recently, what's going on right now. Things are changing and shifting very quickly. We haven't really ever talked about doing Zoom parties. It's been Facebook parties for a long, long time now. But if we're paying attention to Facebook, we see people who've never Zoomed in their lives Zooming right now because there's screenshots of them and 7 different family members Zooming together. There's pictures of Passover. My boyfriend's Jewish, so we saw lots of our friends posting family pictures of celebrating Passover together all over the country. But anyway, my daughters and my son Zoomed together last weekend. They've never used Zoom other than Carla using it for Color Street, but my other daughter and son, they've never used Zoom in their life. They had to open up an account to make that happen. People want to connect. So we're talking about right now doing Zoom parties because people love that. They love the idea of seeing their friends, like actually having a quarantine party where they can have a little cocktail with them and see their friends sipping on cocktails or see their friends sipping on wine and can really say, how you guys doing? How you holding up? Have a little bit of a conversation together like they would at a face-to-face party. So Zoom parties are a thing right now, or they haven't been. So anything that you're testing that's working right now, whether it's because we're quarantined or there's something else going on, could be, like '08 when we had that mortgage crash. How are we getting around this? How are we still holding parties? How are we still recruiting? So anything that's recent that you need to keep in front of them and message so that they're hearing it. And also another reason to re-message is because people are in different places in their business when they hear things the first time, the second time, the third time. Maybe the first time you heard anybody train on recruiting, you were a brand new stylist and you might have thought, I'm not interested in recruiting. I don't even know what I'm doing yet. So you didn't really listen. Nothing really settled in because you didn't feel like it applied to you. But then you get your first recruit and all of a sudden you're thinking, maybe I do want to be a team leader. So the next time you hear a recruiting training, you're hearing it with different ears. You're listening now with a more open mind. And then you get to team leader and you think, okay, I want to be a better recruiter. So you listen to another recruiting message and you're listening as somebody who really wants to get good at recruiting. I want to be a consistently good recruiter so that I can build leaders now and teach people to recruit. So wherever we're at in the business, we could hear the same training and hear it differently. How many of you have listened to one of my trainings again and again and again? Maybe you heard it at conference when I spoke there, or when I did a training for Debbie and Jackie's organization, or maybe you just purchased one of my trainings, but you heard it at different places, like multiple times in your business, meaning multiple places for you in your business, and you heard things that you didn't hear the first time. Anybody experience that, right? Okay, so let's go. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. Following up with the masses versus the individuals. So when we are remessaging something, trying to raise awareness about something, train on a certain topic, and we are, let's say we're marketing it to our team, we're going to be training on recruiting at our next meeting. And so we want to make sure that we're getting people to attend our training, whether it's a Zoom or on in person, but we want to let people know what's going to be happening at the next training so that people will show up for it. If we just say, hey, everybody, we're doing a great training on recruiting on Thursday, May 3rd, hope to, can't wait to see you there, or something like that. That message only speaks to people that know that they want to recruit, know that that's something that they're interested in. If they don't know that they're interested, they might not even join in. But if we marketed that in a different way and said, let me show you how you can earn $3,000 a month in the next 90 days. That's a whole different message. It doesn't even say we're going to be talking about recruiting. But when they get there, when they show up, we're going to talk about why they want to be a team leader, what's going to be the benefit to them when they become a team leader. And then we're going to talk about how they get to that $3,000 mark, which is something that I've covered with you guys before. I had a little graph that showed you how quickly they can get to a $3,000 a month income versus a little over $200 a month if they are, I think it's like 202 that your team leaders earn if they're selling 300 and the team volume is 2,500. Not a very exciting number, right? But when we can talk about how to earn $3,000 a month as a team leader, that's way more than they're earning right now. So we get them there based on, I can show you how to earn $3,000, at the end of the next 90 days. That's exciting. So we market differently to draw people in so that we get that opportunity to work with them. Okay, so that's what I mean by marketing to the masses and keeping it generic and simple. And also don't confuse people. If we're marketing something and we give them too much detail, too many numbers, too many statistics, too much text, then the confused mind just says no. So we want to keep that very simple when we're talking with the masses. And then with stronger skill sets, we go back to the masses. When we're having conversations with our stylists or our future leaders, we have to keep things more basic and more simple. So if I'm coaching a brand new team leader, we're going to have very different conversations. We're going to work on, how do you book a nail bar? How do you get the people there? What does the party format look like? How do I work with a new stylist? We'll have really simple conversations. That's not going to confuse them, overwhelm them. And then we'll get deeper and deeper as their skill set grows. If I'm having a conversation with a SD or an ED or an NED or a Jewel, it's going to be based on their skill set. We're going to get into much more deeper conversations, helping them to develop stronger skill sets, teaching them how to not just recruit themselves, but how do you teach people how to recruit? What does that training look like? How do you build leaders? And I hope you find a good one, but how do you build leaders? Because we can build a leader out of anybody. We don't find great leaders, we build great leaders. So my conversations are very different based on the skill set of the individual that I'm going to have. But we do keep remessaging. I could be I coached CJ Summers for 7 years, and there are many times where I'll say, okay, so remember, da-da-da-da-da. And it's something I've probably said 4,000 times to her, but we come back to it just as a gentle reminder, like oh yeah, that's right, you've got to focus on that too. So even with somebody that we're talking to all the time, remessaging and following up is super important. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I hope this is helpful to you guys. I hope you're starting to understand how important your role is in following up. We also want to remember that people have different learning styles. We have auditory learners. Those people learn through hearing. They love podcasts. They love conference calls. They learn through just hearing. And then we have visual learners. And this is where most women fall, is they're visual learners. And so something like this is better for a visual learner, where they're not just listening to me talk on a call, but they actually get to see me, they get to see slides. So that helps them. And then we have our readers. They are the ones that read books like crazy. They read articles. They read documents. They're the ones that will read those 12-page documents that you're like, can you just put it in a video that I can watch? So we have our readers. And the more that we can follow up through all of these different platforms, the more people in our downline we're going to reach. If we just put things out in text, we're going to miss most people, because most people are not readers. We're going to miss most of them. So we go over to the right there and we see newsletters. Okay, so who do we reach in a newsletter? We reach our readers, right? They're the ones that really will read the entire newsletter. So we can use newsletters to have recognition. That's a way to remessage things, and we'll talk about that. We can use our newsletter to have a short little paragraph article, training tip, that's a remessage of something that we want to make sure we're keeping in front of them. Might be somebody that did a full-on training on hostess coaching in a Zoom for the organization. But in the newsletter, we have her just quick little paragraph with 4 tips for good results through hostess coaching. So newsletters can be more than just recognition. We can use it to remessage as well. And then email, we can send out emails to our entire team with perhaps a document that has a bullet point outline of a party format that we're really trying to keep in front of people and make sure that they're using. We could use email to have a little article. Every couple of weeks I send out from Average to Excellence a bi-weekly tip, and it's just, it's like this much in text, and it's just a training article that I've written about something that I feel is pertinent to you guys, that will be helpful to you guys. It's free, but it's my way of keeping the sharing messages in front of my subscribers and remessaging through different kinds of articles, often the same message. On your team page is a great way to follow up. Just having different leaders post their takeaway from next week's training. What was your takeaway? And just making sure your leaders are engaged and helping you with this with, I loved this point, or I loved that point, or it's I forget what you're calling your daily connect the dots. So maybe a lot of people aren't getting on that. You can use your team page to remessage a great point that you heard in the connect the dots training today. And that will get more people to listen to it when they get a sense of what's really happening there, what's going on there, what are the takeaways. So we can use our team page for that. We can use our team page for shout outs and recognition that in a very subtle way remessage, like congratulations to Susie Q for already holding 6 nail bars, and it's only the 15th. You are right on track for your fabulous 10-8-2 count. So even just shout outs on our team page can remessage some of those things that we want to keep our team focused on that equal success. And then in coaching, this is one-on-one, and this is where we can follow up and work with our future leaders and our direct leaders in areas that they might be struggling by bringing back points that might have gotten past them, that they might have missed. I'm just not recruiting. Okay, well, tell me about your party count. How many parties have you held in the last 3 months? I've held 3. Okay, how many have you recruited? 1. Okay, so it's probably not your party count. It's probably not your recruiting efforts. It's probably more than likely your party count, because a good recruiter recruits 1 out of 4. Remember, so see, that's a remessage right there. 1 out of 4. That's something we want in front of our leaders all the time, so that they know that if they're holding 4 parties, they're not growing, and that's why. So remember, 1 out of 4 is a really good recruiting number. So your ratio is 1 out of 3. That's really good. If your party count was 6, you'd have 2 recruits. If it was 9, you might have 3 recruits. So it's the party count is the miss here. So that's in coaching. We can bring points back to them that we want to become a part of our culture, a way of thinking for our organization by bringing them up in areas that they're struggling in. And then in contacts, when we're talking with our new stylists, and goodness, remember how much they've got going on right now as a new stylist in their first 95 days, how much they're trying to learn, how much they're trying to remember. And it just is a lot of it is a blur. So what they're retaining is a very tiny percent. In most cases, it's the first time they heard something. So when we're working in those new stylist contacts, we want to talk again and again about what you do to get your attendance up at your nail bars, what your party format looks like, what you do to get bookings, how you follow up with the individuals to get those bookings. We're using those contacts to remessage, to follow up with our new stylists so that it starts to settle in with them and they start to get those systems down. This is how I book my nail bars at my nail bars. This is how I hostess coach. This is, what I do before the party. This is how I follow up. All of that starts to really settle in. This is how I enter orders. All of that starts to become easier and easier with them because we are following up and reminding. Recognition, I've given you a tiny idea of how we can use recognition to remessage. Recognize the behaviors you want repeated. So if you're taking notes, make sure you write that down. Recognize the behaviors you want repeated. Use recognition to move the needle in the direction that you want it to, but also so that they're remembering this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know that you can't recognize, you can't really see party counts in your back office, but you can see volume. You can talk to people. When you see somebody that sold $5,000 and she's right now your number one in sales in your organization, all it takes is a reach out. Like, wow, I saw that you sold $5,000. How many nail bars have you held this week? And if it matches what the behavior you want repeated, meaning if she's held 6 nail bars or she's held 8, we can shout out, Susie Q's already sold $5,000 this month. And then in parentheses with only 7 nail bars. So we're very subtly showing that it's the party count is there, and that's why the volume is there. We could talk about, we could see the recruiting numbers, and this takes a little bit of conversation because we can't see all the numbers that I would like you to be able to see in the back office, but just a few conversations will be really helpful there for messaging things to your people. When you see somebody's got 3 or 4 recruits or 2 recruits consistently, how many nail bars are they holding to get those 2 recruits? And then we could come back to that. She's held 8, she's got 2, just like the plan, just like the numbers work. So those kinds of messages through recognition. Trying to think of what other categories. With the Launch +4 for your new stylists, recognizing your top stylists in volume in their first month. And leaders, you can send a quick note to Debbie or Jackie and say, you got to check this out. Angie held her Launch +4 in April and she sold $3,300, so that we can be recognizing our top new stylists and showing them how much better they do when they start right. That will speak to not only your new stylists, but it will also speak to your leaders. Because if their stylists aren't seeing those kinds of results, eventually they're going to say, maybe I need to do something different. So does that make sense? Am I making myself clear on how we can use recognition? When I was VP of sales for Princess House Canada, I was pretty new there. And they were not a recruiting company, they were a selling company because they had ridiculous incentive trips like to Turks and Caicos and Italy. Just ridiculous incentive trips. And so the sales volumes to earn these trips were super high, but the recruiting requirements were not. So they were a very sales-focused company, and you can imagine not growing. So we changed the focus and really started training on recruiting and how much greater your income would be if you were building teams and growing your leader count. So we just preach that and preach that and preach that, and alongside of the importance of the strong start in the Launch +4. And so we started recognizing the top 3 leaders in new stylist sales. And boy, did they covet that. They wanted to be recognized on the leader call for being one of the top 3 leaders in new stylist volume. So they were working much more closely with their new people, and they were making sure that they had a really great start. That's just another way we can use recognition to follow up and impact getting the results that we want from the messages that we're putting out there. All right, so auditory, visual, readers, all those different ways that we can work with them to make sure that we're reaching all of those different learning styles. Okay, next slide. Now let's talk about the trickle-down effect. So we don't want to be the only one that is preaching these different things that we want to become a part of our organization's culture, our organization's programs. If we're the only one talking about it, then it doesn't go very far. Remember, leaders, especially, Debbie, Jackie, your leaders they're the mouthpiece for you to their teams. They talk to their teams way more than you do. They're the ones that are working with their new stylists. They're the ones that are working with their future leaders. They're the ones that are talking to their direct leaders. They have a lot more talk time with those people than we do. We do things like this for the whole organization, but we don't have that direct communication with everybody in our organization. So we depend on our leaders to be following up and re-messaging the same things that we're talking about. When they're following up, we want them to be training in the same direction we are. And that comes from us as leaders training through coaching and our trainings, training our leaders on the different things that we want them to do, and then making it obvious. So I just talked with you today, and if you talk to my coaching clients, they'll tell you so often I'll say, okay, so now I've just talked with you about blah, blah, blah. How are you going to take that to your team? What are you going to do with this? Are you going to be the only one doing this, or are you going to take this information and take it to your team? And if you are, how are you going to do that? So we want to make sure that we're not just training our leaders to do certain things, but we're making that obvious and saying, okay, now how are you going to take this to your team? What platforms are you going to use to message this and train this to your teams? How are you going to re-message this? How are you going to follow up on this? That's one way of getting the trickle-down effect. And then if we go to the next slide, I've got a couple more ideas for you as far as how we can trickle down. Yeah, no, that's right, Debbie. Party observations. Whether you do your nail bars online, whether you do them face-to-face in living rooms or at wine bars or restaurants or offices, or right now you're going to try this Zoom thing, or however you do your parties, when you're recruiting people, are you taking them on party observations with you? If you're face-to-face somehow, are you inviting your new stylist to come with you and observe what you're doing? If you do online parties, are you inviting your new stylist to come and watch you from beginning to end? How you set up the event for your hostess? Send it to the hostess. Are they invited to your nail bar to follow along every step of the way and see what you do? Remember, most women are visual learners, and so this just makes it seem so much easier when they watch you do the dice game on your online parties at an in-home party. It seems so much easier. I can't even tell you how many people have bought my dice game at an event, or they bought it online, and the next time they saw me might be a year later when I'm coming back to speak at a regional or speak at their conference again, and this time I modeled the dice game and show them how to play it. They'll come to my table and say, I've had that dice game for a year and I've never done it. I just couldn't. It was just too intimidating. You just made it look so easy, and it is easy. But when they see you, that's when they see how easy it is. If it's an in-person and they can see you building rapport as people are arriving, they can see how you stack the hostess, play a booking game, what you say about different designs, how you talk about overlays, what you do with the application, how you're sharing the business opportunity, your why story, the Q&A. When they can actually watch you do things, it feels a lot easier, a lot less intimidating. So And same with those online parties. So party observations with your new people is a great way to train and re-message those things and follow up on those things that we've been talking about with them, you know, in those voice-to-voice conversations or in our Strong Start training, things like that. But it's also a fabulous way to work with your future leaders. When you bring them to your nail bars, however you do them, they get to see you recruiting. And they will learn because it's been a long time since they've seen you do a nail bar. And now they're watching with different eyes. So they're going to pick up on those things that you're doing to enhance recruiting at your nail bars. And then when I would bring future leaders, not future leaders, direct leaders with me on party observations who were struggling a little bit and just needed a pick-me-up, they could come and see, what did I stop doing? Just because, I mean, my party never changed. It was the party cards and the dice game every time. So it was always the same. So they'd come and they'd watch and say, what? And I'd say, watch to see what you've stopped doing. And if that isn't why you're struggling with bookings or struggling with recruiting. So we use party observations so that we are trickling down how to do things, right? And our parties are so important. That's where our bookings come from, our sales, our recruits, our next leader. So we want to make sure we've got a really good system in place for them to follow. Okay, so next slide. This is my favorite slide of our whole evening together tonight, turning messages into mantras. And I hope, again, we're starting to understand what follow-up means. You know, it's kind of a vague term, but what does follow-up really mean? How do I do it? Where do I do it? Why is it important? And mantras are, they just become catchy mantras. I don't know why I'm trying to change the word. They become catchy mantras that people just pop back and forth at each other until it's almost like a joke, but we're saying it all the time. So 10-8-2 is a message that we want to turn into a mantra, because if you've got future leaders and they are doing 10-8-2, booking 10 to hold 8 to recruit 2, they're going to get to team leader just like that. You've got team leaders that want to go to director, and they're following the 10-8-2, book 10 to hold 8 so you can recruit 2, 1 out of every 4. You're going to get them moving up through ranks so quickly. Your organization is going to grow so quickly. So that's a really powerful mantra. 4 to maintain, 4 parties, 1 recruit to maintain, 6 and 1.5 for slow growth, and 8 for explosive growth. Messages that we want to turn into mantras. So we're not the only ones saying it, but when your leaders are coaching their future leaders and their people are saying, I just can't get any recruits, or I'm just not moving, we can look at their party count. They instinctively, without even hesitating, know to ask the question, tell me how many nail bars you've held in February, March, and April. Because they know that that's usually one of the 2 stoppers. Or they know to look inward and say, I'm not growing. Why aren't I growing? Is it my party count? Am I following the 4 and 1, or the 6 and 1.5, or the 8 and 2? Because it's talked about so much that they can't miss it. And then do enough of the right things and you'll get the right results. This became a Shari mantra when I was talking to Martine Williams. She's a national executive director with 31 gifts, and I've coached her for 11 years. And I used to always say, if you do the right things, you'll get the right results. And I happened to say on our coaching call that day, well, if you do enough of the right things, you'll get the right results. And she said, no, Shari, no, that's not right. Because I can talk to my leader and say, are you holding parties? Yes. Are you talking to people about the business? Yes. Are you recruiting? No. Or, yes, I'm sorry, yes. But they're not holding enough parties to get the number of recruits they need. They're not talking to enough people to get the number of recruits they need to grow. They're not recruiting enough people to grow. So they're doing the right things, but they're not doing enough of it. I'm doing 2 parties a month. That's not enough. to grow. So I loved that. She really kind of slapped my hand there. Do enough of the right things and you'll get the right results. This is a 31 gifts mantra. It just spread through 31 gifts like wildfire in a time when people were dropping rank like crazy. And a big part of it was that the top leaders had stopped doing parties. So that means that they stopped recruiting, which means they stopped building direct leaders, which means that their leader count was dropping and their income was dropping. So they weren't recruiting. So they were trying to work with the same people to get bigger results. You know, I mean, how many of you leaders have people on your team that they do $300 a month, or they do $300 every few months so that they don't drop off? And we're trying to talk to them and inspire them, and it's just discouraging and exhausting. And if we had new people coming in that were exciting to work with, our job would be so much more fun. Or we're working with that same leader that's been at the same rank for 12 months, but she really wants to change rank, but she's not changing any behaviors, and it's exhausting. But if we had a new future leader who was recruiting and excited, way more fun to talk to. Or if we're talking to somebody who's bringing in new people and building new leaders, and they're excited, way more fun to talk to, way more fun to work with. So this became their mantra. If you can't change your team, change your team. So when a downline leader was complaining about, you know, I'm working with this person and this person and this person, and, you know, she's just still doesn't have any parties, and they'd say, if you can't change your team, meaning if you can't get her to do something, get somebody new. If you can't change your team, change your team. I loved that one. So I shared that with every coaching client I had with any company I was working with. Retention starts before they do, meaning that if we just sign them up, we're going to lose them. But if we do the right things with them before we sign them up, then the retention will be there. Retention starts before they do. I love that one. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Meaning that verbiage is really important. Tone is really important. So this is a really good mantra to keep in front of people, so they're conscious of the kind of language they use with people. And is it sensitive? Is it kind? Is it encouraging? Or, you know, is it just super direct, like I tend to be, and have to be really, really careful? You know, somebody might say, I'm not recruiting. And I'd say, well, tell me about your party count. And we discover that they've averaged 2 parties a week for the last 3 months. And my gut would be to say, well, there's your problem. You're not holding enough parties. But I've learned to say, oh, I think I see the miss. It's your party count. You know, and we can fix that. That feels entirely different, doesn't it? The tone and the language, first go round from the second go round, which one would you respond better to? So it's not what you say, it's how you say it. We want to be making our leaders really conscious of how important their words are and their tone. We don't find more me's, we build them. If I had a penny for every coaching client I've had that said, I just need to find more me's, I'd be a millionaire. And I will always say back to them, we don't find more me's, we build them. We teach them. Anybody can be a top leader. We build them. We don't just recruit and hope we find one. We build them. Okay, so let's go to next slide. More mantras here. This is a fun one to open a meeting with every month, close a meeting with every month. If you play around with your business will give you money to play with. If you are serious about your business will give you serious money. If you give your business everything you've got, your business will give you everything you could ever want. Just a fun way to remind them of the potential at Keller Street. Great mantra. It's actually a Zig Ziglar quote, so I can't take credit for this one, but it's a good one that I say all the time. When you can't see that far, go a little ways, and when you get there, you'll be able to see further. Just so that aren't so discouraged or overwhelmed thinking from senior stylist to executive feels a million miles away. I'm never going to get there. This just says, we just go a little ways, and then you can see the next step. When you're a senior stylist, just get to team leader, and then you can see director, and then get to director, and you can see senior director. When you can't see that far, go a little ways, and you'll be able to see further. Okay, next slide. I love this one. The first time I heard this next mantra, I was at a regional training. We were regional training managers. We were corporate, and we were at a regional training manager meeting, and our VP of sales said, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And being one of those people that always feels like no matter how hard I work, no matter how much I do, there's always more that I should be doing. And often to the point of exhaustion. That message, where I'm just not productive anymore or good. And that message just hit me like a bullet. And I've never forgotten it. And now, today, and for many years now, when I'm working really hard, I'll just say, okay, I'm done. Anything that I put out from this point on is not going to be as good as it would be if I started on it when I'm fresh tomorrow. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. Good one for us as women, especially. Another mantra, it's never the money, it's what the money will do. Money is the number one motivator in our business. It's what motivates people to join. It's what motivates people to move into leadership, up through the ranks of leadership. It's the money. It's number one. Recognition is number two. So we use that mantra to say, not just talking about income, but what people are doing with that money, or showing them what they could do with an income if they were earning it, getting people to think about what they would do with that money, people sharing stories about what they've done with that money, because the money by itself is not nearly as motivating and inspiring as connecting it to what the money will do. Simplify. This is something that I have to remind myself of all the time. Remember, the confused mind just says no. That's another great mantra. But I have to remind myself, because I can tend to add and add and add and add to a training like this. Like, oh, I should add this. Oh, I should add this. And pretty soon the training is so complicated that it's no good anymore. The first Fast Track to Leader series that I created when I was at Party Light, I took it to home office, and the vice president, I walked him all the way through it. I was really proud of it. I thought it was amazing. And the vice president said, it's too complicated. And I was devastated. And we kind of walked away from the table and went to have lunch or whatever. And one of the other staff said, Shari, I thought it was brilliant. I think you was professor quality. And that just said to me, it was too complicated. If it sounded like a professor wrote it, it's too complicated. So that was my first lesson, is simplify things. And then when I went to Creative Memories to be their head of training, everything they had was so complicated, ridiculous, cluttered, complicated, wordy, confusing. And so we put up a sign in our, I got one of those big, not a sign, but block letters that just said, simplify. And everything in our department was focused on making things simpler for the field. Whenever we would create something, is it simple? Is it confusing? Is it duplicatable? And they would call me out on it too. Like I would say, okay, let's do this. And they'd say, is it simple? Simplify was our mantra. Make that a mantra in your organization where everything is simple, not confusing, not complicated. Confused mind just says no. But also so that they look at it and say, I can do that. We want that to be a mantra. Is it duplicatable? Ask your leaders that all the time so that they kind of shoot that back and forth at each other. Is it duplicatable? Can everybody do this? If everybody can't do it, we shouldn't be teaching it. Okay, and then recognize the behaviors you want repeated. We've already talked about that at length, so I won't go into it, but that's a mantra. It's a really great mantra. And what's interesting to me, and this will tell you the power of it, of remessaging and the importance of follow-up. When I have talked with a client for a long time, let's say Martine Williams, when I had worked with her for a couple of years, and I would go to her area and train at her regional meetings or her leader retreats, people would come back to my table and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, you sound just like Martine." And Martine and I would just giggle, because it was Martine who had adopted all of these mantras that I had said to her again and again. And I love it when coaching clients will say them back to me. Like when they'll say to me, the confused mind just says, "No, Shari, I get it." Or when they say, "I know, 10-8-2." When they come back at me, I know they're hearing me because I've said it so many times to them. All right, next. Seasonal and incentive mantras. So I see a couple of here, like seasonal, meaning mantras that are centered around some of those market trends that we talked about earlier, like slow summer months, maximizing the best season of the year. You all know CJ Summers, and I have been invited to be on her team page, so I apologize if it sounds like I'm talking to her a lot, but I've just known her for 7 years now, so I have a lot of stories behind her. And I can see her team page. But in December, they took on this mantra, "Do it in December." And it was everywhere on her team page. Different leaders talking about an idea, do it in December. And then they would talk about, do this in your VIP group. And, they'd talk about the results they got doing this. Do it in December. Do this at your nail bars. Do it in December. Reach out to people and say this. And it was just lots of leaders giving little 5-minute tips of things people could do in December. Why? Because people take December off. Stylists take December off. Leaders take December off. At the very best, they work until the cutoff date for holiday delivery, and then they disappear. But the majority of people don't work in December. And so if we know that that's a market trend, we can combat that. And that's exactly why they did this, is to keep people working in December, to give them little ideas that would excite them and inspire them. And it worked brilliantly. People started posting on the team page, stylists and senior stylists and team leaders started posting on the team page, "I did blah, blah," whatever somebody had just trained on. In her Do It in December talk, and I did this, and I got $300 in sales. So they're kind of re-messaging for the leaders, "I did this in that Do It in December talk I heard, blah, blah, blah." And it just spread like wildfire. So that's just one tiny example of something that you can just turn into a mantra, and you just use it for a short period of time, for the season, that month, that quarter, that kind of thing. When I was with another company, the mantra was Bahama bound, or it could be Maui bound or New York bound. And I've seen you guys come up with really catchy phrases like this that just stick, and we can tie it to so many different things. Bahama bound, here's a recruiting tip. Bahama bound, here's a sales tip, to keep people excited around that, having success in that particular season, or achieving that different incentive. Circle of excellence is another one that people are talking about all the time. COEs, I think we've modified that now. Is there any more slides? Can't remember. Is that it?
No, yeah, sorry, I was muted.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so on you leaders, this will make such a difference in your income, in your team growth, if we're not just counting on the home office to talk about something, or Debbie or Jackie to talk about something, and hoping our team gets it, but really joining forces to follow up with your teams, keep things in front of them, not just re-messaging, but following up and just re-coaching almost on, these are the 3 steps you do with your hostess, but things like that. I hope this made sense. I hope it was helpful. And I'll just turn it over to you now, Deb, for questions or whatever you want.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I know one thing of course, everything was great, but you had some interesting things for recognition too. Like I like the top stylists in their beginning of the month. Never thought to do that. So you had some interesting ones, but yeah, you had so many great things, of which, of course, a lot of it, I know, but it doesn't mean that it always happens. So it's so great to rehear it. And it's great for especially our newer leaders to hear some of this stuff. I know we've kept you on an hour, so Shari may have a couple minutes to take questions if anybody had any questions. What's that?
It'll be short.
I know it was great. It was really easy to stay focused that long too, because it's all very, like you said, it's not complicated, right? The information you gave us is all very doable, and it's not complicated. Does anybody have any questions for her before we hang up? Nobody?
Question, but I just want to say I love the whole recognition of recognize the behaviors you want repeated.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Like I just love that, Shari.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. There's a flip side to that. Like if we recognize BQ, they'll think that's success. So,
Right.
Not just the big numbers, but we're recognizing little things. That's what they think they're supposed to do. So.
Yeah, and I mean, there were so many great things, bringing on the party observations, look at my notes. Of course, hearing the numbers again, like the 1082 with your sponsoring. And I mean, it all is just, yeah, I love the mantra things too. It is true. You hear those things over and over, and it becomes part of your culture and your language. So you guys, Dina, you have a question?
Yeah. Thanks, Deb. Thank you, Shari. This was great. I especially loved focusing on simplifying. I think people appreciate that because we're all so busy. I just needed to clarify in my notes. I know you mentioned the mantra 10-8-2, and then you said 4 for maintenance, 6 for slow growth, 8 for explosive growth. Was that a number for recruiting or a number for nail bars to hold like in a week or a month or?
It's Dina, right?
Dina, yes.
Dina. So this is where I talk about a good recruiter gets 1 recruit out of every 4 parties. So if we're holding, a good recruiter gets 1 out of every 4.
Okay.
So, that's also good to remind people so that they know if it's taken me 8 nail bars to get a recruit, that's an area I need to improve on. But a good recruiter gets 1 out of 4, and 1 recruit a month is maintenance. It means whatever rank you are, you're not changing. You might you'll hang easily at team leader, if you're getting 1 recruit a month and more, but you're not going to go to director. So 6 means you'll get 1.5 recruits, 1 this month, 2 the next, to equate 1.5 because 1 out of 4, right? So that's where we start to see slow growth. We get to director, we get to executive, but it takes longer. And then 8 parties and 2 recruits, 1 out of 4, is where we see every time explosive growth.
Okay.
That's what that means.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
I have one more question. Sorry.
Yeah,
You know how there are some people who so I'm guessing the explosive growth is when we hear about somebody who's new to Color Street and we find out they've become a director in like just a few short months, or somebody became an executive director in like 6 months. And we're all like, how did they do that? Would that be, beyond that explosive growth where they're just like recruiting 5 or 6 a month? Like, how does that happen when we hear about that?
Those are, a team leader in 90 days would be right up my program. That would be promoting fast track leader is a 60 to 90 day program at Color Street. Executive in 6 months means that there's something unusual, like they came with a network. They came from another company, their leaders followed them. They have a giant network of, maybe they do a blog and they have like a giant VIP group from another company. But to just be normal Joe and Jenny, normal Jenny, and come into Color Street and start holding parties and promote to executive would be an incredible anomaly. So that's why I say if it doesn't work for everybody, don't train on it. We don't want to train, like start a blog and try and get 13,000 followers so that you too can recruit 6 people. That's just, who can do that? Who has time to to do that. So, so no, the 1082 would not, that's not a plan to get to executive in 6 months, but it is.
That was a great question, Dina, because we do hear of that. And then, to other people, it's discouraging.
Right.
So to know that that is not what your numbers represent is good.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much, Shari.
That was a great question.
We have a new gal on our team that did not even get her kit yet. And she's in a week today, and she's at over $5,000 in sales.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Now that could end up being explosive growth, but she
Right.
does some big network. Well, she has a network for buying, but yeah.
That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And it inspires other people to find out, I just caution you to not look at your rate of growth but look at Amy over here, who's, just like promoted up 3 ranks in 6 months. And what's wrong with me? Comparison is the thief of joy. If we just focus on what am I willing to do? Am I willing to do, do I want to do 35 parties a month so that I can recruit 6? That's just not something that most people want to do. But 2 parties a week is something that anybody can see themselves doing. That's duplicatable. We can train on that. We can teach that. Can't teach people, like the 21 up at Party Light. I mean, we did that for 2 years and it never caught on. It was just too much. So, but anyway, I'll stop that rabbit trail.
Yeah, and at one point, and I'm assuming this was just a misspoke, you said when you were when you coached with a person, you were just given a situation, and you said they said their party count was low, and I said, or they said they weren't recruiting. I said, what was your party count? You said 2 a week, and I said, and you said, well, so let's relook at that. I'm assuming you meant 2 a month.
2 a month. Thank you. Good catch.
I just, in case someone else picked up on that, I didn't want them to think 2 a week was not.
Yeah, thank you.
Enough. Okay. Anything else, you guys? Amanda, you just came off from having just your name. You're showing yourself. Does that mean you have a question?
No, I was multitasking with some teaching stuff, getting ready with my periodic table.
All right, Shari, it was really great. And I look forward to training with our teams next week too, for follow-up for them with their businesses. I think they'll learn a lot too. So
and then
thanks.
Follow up on the follow-up.
Exactly. So I'll make sure we post this so all the leaders who are not on get to make sure they watch it too, because it was a great training to watch.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks for doing a Zoom with us too. See, I'm the visual learner. I need the slides in the face. I can't do the phone call and pick up on it as well.
Happy to do it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.